Hey everyone, this is going to be my September wrap up. I didn't really finish my notes, so we're just kind of going to wing it. So, this month I read 21 books for a total of 7,634 pages. I read 14 ebooks, 3 manga or light novels, and then 5 regularly formatted novels. The ebooks were all from KU. One of the manga was from Pango, and then I had a manga and a light novel from Kinokuniya, and then the rest were from Fairy Loot. We're going to start with the first book I read, which is Fire with Fire. I've been trying to work my way through every single Fairy Loot and other book box book that I have received, because there's quite a stack of them. So this was an effort to do that. This follows 2 sisters who have been raised to be dragon slayers by their family. One of them just wants to be normal, and she's really good at all of the training that she does, but she just wants to be normal. She just wants to go to homecoming, go to football games, just have a very this is also contemporary, which was kind of surprising to me. But so she just wants to have a normal high school life. And then her older sister has been training and training and training, and just still feels like she isn't good enough and all that kind of thing. And so there's a clash there. And then the younger one bonds with a dragon and realizes that slaying is not all it's cracked up to be, in terms of the consequences and why they were even doing it to begin with. And then the other sister is approached by sorcerers to be oh, we can make you the best. It was fine. This was written in a very specific moment in time. There are references to song lines from a particular time frame. I think this was published in 2021. So yeah, probably written sometime in 2019, maybe 2020. I don't know how long the publishing process lasts. There's a Billie Eilish line, a line from a Billie Eilish song, and you're just okay, well, this very much. And there were several instances where that happened, and it just very much dates the book, which is fine. I don't love that in books, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I wish there had been a little more depth in some of the relationships, in terms of the sister who bonded with the dragon. I wish there had been a little bit more, I guess, history there, how people bond with dragons, kind of thing. I don't know, I can't say that I loved it. It was fine. Someone else will enjoy this more than I did. I think this was actually the first book that I got in a Fairy Loot subscription. I'm going to do a video on, a different video on all of the Fairy Loot books. So I am going to hang on to it for now, but it is not going to stay in my house forever. The next book that I read also did not like, and this was The Bright and the Pale. This is also the Fairy Loot edition. This is also a 2021 pick, but it was from before I got my subscription, and I got it in a past box sale. There's this cursed village. Everyone from that village, or that has, maybe no, not necessarily from that village, but there's there's a group of oppressed people, and then this village freezes over, and there's this girl, the female main character is the lone survivor of this village, and she is trained to be a thief, and she loses her friend slash partner a year prior to the start of the book on a mission, and things have gone sideways, and then it's revealed that her friend is still alive, and if they go back, like if she joins this group of people to go back to like the cursed village that she escaped, like the frozen village, then she'll be able to stay with that friend, like the one that she thought died, and leave like the Thieves Guild. And so she like reunites with her friend, and they go with a group of other people back to the village, and they like enter this creepy mine and meet Cochet, who is like one of the gods, like the bright one and the pale one, which is, you know, the title of the book. And he wants her to be his knight. But she denies him at first, but then, like, when she needs to save her friend, she accepts Cochet's deal to, like, gain the power to, like, heal him. Basically, like, every interaction that she has with her friend, like, they're both, like, mad, and she's in denial that she's being used by the leader of the Thieves Guild, who like didn't like who knew that he was alive but didn't tell her. And that might be a spoiler. I don't know. I don't particularly care. It was like not unpredictable that that was the case. But yeah, this was not it. This was extra not it. Like I at least had a decent time with Fire, but this one, like, it was kind of creepy, which I'm not super into. Angry and angsty characters, and just like loads of secrets. Everyone was like really bad about jumping to conclusions or like making assumptions and like jumping to incorrect conclusions about a lot of things. Sometimes correct, but mostly incorrect. And just like bad judgment all around. It's just it wasn't a fun time. Like that's not the vibe I go for in books most of the time. So yeah. So this is also going to leave my house eventually. The next book that I read, which is actually a duology, I read These Hollow Vows, and then I completed the duology with These Twisted Bonds. These Hollow Vows was a reread. Bree goes to the Seelie Court to take part in like the selection process for Prince Ronan's human bride. While she's on her way there, she meets Finn, who is the Unseelie prince. Along the way, she has to sit like her sister's been taken by the Unseelie king. In order to save her sister, she has to get him items from the Seelie court. Prince Ronan is there's a lot of red flags, especially on reread. And then there's betrayal at the end. Probably in more than one way. I do have a separate video coming for that eventually. A lot of people would probably say this, like this, it does have a similar feel, a similar vibe to like ACOTAR. It is different in some ways, but in a lot of ways, like especially like the love interests are very ACOTAR coded. So, you know, do with that what you will. I do think some of the lore is a little bit different. Like in my video, I said that it feels a lot more like a Karen Marie Moning book, like some older, like early 2000s, maybe 2010s, like paranormal romance type books in terms of like the two different fae courts. So I did enjoy that aspect a lot. These Twisted Bonds was like, it was a fine sequel, but like it didn't make it a good overall series for me. There were parts in this where Finn was just behaving like an obnoxious asshat, like to the point where I was like, you shouldn't be with either one of these because they're acting like manipulative little 12-year-olds or whatever. They do get to a point where there is not the proximity of the love triangle and like it's her and one of them together and it's better. She ends up with probably who you expect. It's fine. It's fine. Again, not staying in my house. I will put these probably all up on Pango. This duology, I will. I haven't looked for the other two on Pango, but I suspect they're going to go for like fairly cheap, and there might be more than one copy up there, in which case I will probably just take it to my used bookstore, because someone deserves to find a fancy edition in a book that they like. These Hollow Vows was one of the subscription books, and then I got the sequel from Fairy Loot as well. Even at the time, I was like, do I want the sequel? And I should have just listened to that. But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it's like just on the edge where, like, if it's a really good sequel, you're like, oh, okay, I can see like where they were building on this, and you know, or like, you know, I can see it. This one, it's like, that's fine. It was about the same, so it wasn't like drastically better. Anyway, the next book that was kind of part of this mission as well was Year of the Reaper. This is a reread, and I enjoyed it just as much the second time around, so this one's definitely staying in my house. But I was like, you know what? I have read or reread pretty much all of these books that I need to read for this. I enjoyed this, so like I might as well reread it just to double check. This follows Prince Caspian? Cassia? Okay, his full name is like Cassiopeia or something. He goes by Cassia or Kaz. He was kidnapped 3 years ago and by a neighboring kingdom, and like forced to go do like hard labor for them and all this stuff. He is now returning to his home after a plague has broken out. He has escaped his captors, and so he's making his way home, and he gets home, and like the plague has not affected his home city as much as it has in other places. So like right when he gets home, there is like the king has married the princess from the kingdom that they were at war with, and like the same kingdom that captured Cassia. They've gotten married as part of a peace treaty. She's had a baby, and it's like his name day or it's some sort of like celebration with the baby. And someone like tries to assassinate the baby. Cass saves the baby, like jumps, like the baby and the nurse fall into like a lake or a pond or something like that, and he jumps in, saves the baby, and that's kind of like how he announces that he's home. And there's this whole mystery around like who could have done it, who might have done it, who would have had a motivation to do it. And so like he is tasked with like helping uncover who is responsible. And yeah, there's a lot of things that are uncovered, and there's a cute little like side romance where she's a historian, and yeah, and like the writing is really good, the relationships are really good, the story overall is really good, so I really enjoyed this. Definitely keeping it, gonna stick around on my shelves for a while. I did remember most of the twist, and then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this part. But like the overall like big twist I did remember. Yeah, it was fun. The next book that I finished was Full Metal Alchemist: Land of Sand. This is one of the light novels. There were a couple panels like in the back from Arakawa, and yeah, I don't know, it felt like an episode of the show or like a filler chapter in the manga. It's a side quest that's like it's related to the main plot, but it was like not included in, like it was not like as big of a deal overall. So like I could see why it would not have been included. I don't know if this was in the original anime or not. I do know in like the original anime there's a couple things where they go to this mining town. I don't know that it's this one though. But yeah, it was fun. Your typical Ed and Al adventure, and I did end up getting another one. I think there's only 4. There might be 5, but I did get another one. I don't know that I will, depending on how I feel about this next one, I might keep going, but I might not. It's like a fun way to like get a little like taste of the world that you love and like characters that you love without having to like go back and reread and like see parts of the like go through like parts of the plot. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So did that one, and then I picked up Beyond the Clouds. Let me get it so it's not glaring. I got this one off of Pango, I think, and then like look at the back. Like even the back is so pretty. But yeah, so there's this young boy named Theo who like he looks for trash in like the junk heap in town, and he finds a little girl with wings. She's been injured and so she's missing one, but I guess people with wings are really rare, so they try to hide her, like that she has them, and like she has to go out in like a big cloak and things. But he starts building her a new wing and they test the prototypes, but someone sees them in their little like hideout and tries to kidnap her. She and Theo fight them off, and like she doesn't have any memories of like where she came from, like how she got where she was and everything. So it was really cute. It was like a neat world and like beautiful art. I think even on here it says a dreamlike odyssey that's part Studio Ghibli, part Final Fantasy. So yeah, I don't know whether this will become a new favorite, but I did go ahead and get the next several volumes. I think there might only be 5 volumes. I don't know if they're going to publish any more. I don't know if that's like the complete series or what, but if it is, I do have the complete series. So the next volume of manga that I got was Barakuman. This is a slice of life manga, and it follows this guy who is a young calligrapher. He's, probably 20 or something. He received this like prestigious award, and then someone like high up in the community told him that his work was like mediocre at this award ceremony, basically. And so he punched him. It was like, like this old guy and he had a cane. And so there was like huge, like major backlash. And so the guy's father sent him to a remote island to just like exist for a while and like just be and like, here's a place to like work on your calligraphy. But the house that he's renting has been taken over by like a first grader and some teenagers as their hangout spot. So he has a hard time trying to get them out of his space. It's pretty cute. And there was one scene that made me crack up. Like he goes to like this little school on the island and there's like 10 or 20 students max, elementary to middle school, basically. I won't really say much about it, but it's like an interaction with one of the other kids. And it was so unexpected and it was so perfect. It was great. I can't remember if this is an anime as well. I generally prefer slice of life things as an anime, so I might continue with that instead of the manga if there is that option. But if there isn't, I will at least get the next couple volumes and see how things go. I think there are a lot of them. I think there's, like 15 or 18 or something so far. I don't know. It's really cute, really funny. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what to expect, but it was fun. I think that's all of the physical books. The only other physical book that my mom got me, we're going to Prague for Christmas, and my mom got me this for my birthday, and I like finally actually sat down and read it and tabbed things. I didn't include this in my like books read this month. I don't know. I don't think I included this in like a TBR like count either, but I did it. I did it. It's the only other physical book that I read. The rest of these are all KU books. I'm kind of gonna do these in like chunks. I read a couple different series. I started with Rule Number 5, which is a college hockey romance. And she is really goal oriented and has all these rules for her dating life. Rule number 5 is no hockey players. But she meets him like out at a bar and it's like instant attraction. And she's like, oh, too bad, because like, too bad you're a hockey player. Otherwise, we could have gone to Pound Town. And he's like, why no hockey players? And she's like, they're just my rules. They end up in the same class and they end up paired together for a project, I think, or maybe just like studying together, and like end up working really well together, both like scholastically and otherwise. They finally get together. There is a third act breakup, but once the reasoning behind some of her rules and some of her decisions become clear, he makes his big move and is like, oh, no, I'm going to go be with my lady. Like, screw this. He falls first and is like so down bad for his lady. I don't tend to go for college romances very often, but this was really well done. And if more were like this, I would read them more often. There is another book. I think this was the first in the series, but there is another one that's like after, but it seems like it's set before, so I don't know. I wasn't like super interested in like those characters were already together in this book, so I was like, okay, like it's fine. I'm not super interested. So I read, I guess this would be like the third book in the series technically. It's called Rules of Our Own, and it follows three of the characters getting together, two hockey players and the best friend from Rule Number 5. She was attracted to both of the hockey players in the first book. I guess they gave her an ultimatum in that one, like, you have to pick one of us. And she was like, okay, well, then neither. I'm not doing that. Like, no. This is set a couple years later, like a few years later. The couple from the other book that I didn't read are getting married. And they're all three at this wedding, and they're all three sharing a room. Yeah. So it was everything I wanted that I didn't know I wanted. There's like a little bit of a bi awakening on one of the hockey players' parts, and like it turns into a throuple situation, and it's very spicy, very well done. I think this is actually one of the first, if not the first, books that I've read, like a contemporary romance where it's like poly or throuple. Again, if there were more of them like this that I knew about, I'd be more interested. I feel like the character work is really well done. Hi, Cecil. My cat just peeked around the corner like at me. So Rules We Break was the next one I read. It's more of a novella. It was like 70 or 80 pages. It's like a really extended epilogue of like the entire series. You get more scenes of like the three characters from Rules of Our Own, and then you get a few scenes with like the broader friend group. I don't know that it like really added it like rounded out the entire series. So the next book that I read is Obsession Falls by Claire Kingsley. She has written a lot of books, like she's a romance author, but she's written a lot of books with Lucy Score as well as some other like indie romance authors. So she had this series called the Bailey Brothers series, and they I think they were in a winery, but it's set somewhere in, it's either Washington or Oregon, so like Pacific Northwest. There were like five Bailey brothers, and all the women that they turned into their wives, and they had a rival in this, like, because it's a small town romance, and they had like a rival gang of brothers called the Haven Brothers, and there was like a little bit of like a town mystery, and then she revealed that she was gonna do a Haven Brothers series. This is the first one in the series. I think she's published three, maybe four. This is definitely more like romantic suspense and not like rom-com-y the way the other series was, which like is probably a good way to kind of like distinguish them. And like she does acknowledge this like in her acknowledgments pages in the back. Her husband passed away really suddenly 2-3 years ago. Three, maybe four. I don't really remember, but it was maybe like an aneurysm or like a stroke or something of some kind, and just like so like not to do with COVID or anything. I can't remember if it was pre-COVID or not, but just like really really suddenly. And so she was like, I everything that I had like planned out for this series now felt like really wrong and like just not working for me. And so I turned it into a romantic suspense story. And like part of it is because I lost my husband, and so like I didn't want to write like this like fluffy romance. Like I just didn't have it in me, and so it turned into this series, which is, like good for her for even coming back to writing romance. It was not what I was in the mood for. I don't know if I'll continue with the series. I did think it was well done, but again, like, I need to be in the mood for that. I don't really read a ton of romantic suspense. I might come back to it eventually. Like, I've always really enjoyed everything that she's written, but again, I need to be in the mood for it. So I'm glad I checked it out. It's not what I'm in the mood for currently. I might come back to it. I might not. I think if she eventually branches out from, like, once she's done with this series, like if she publishes other things, like I might check those out and see how things are. So, yeah. The next things that I read on KU were two different series of sci-fi romance. The first series that I read and completed, there's 6 books in the Horde King series by Zoe Draven. I don't know if she's related to Grace Draven. I gotta, maybe Grace Draven is like, this is my sci-fi pen name. I don't know, it doesn't have the same flavor as a normal Grace Draven. In order, they are Captive of the Horde King, Claimed by the Horde King, Madness of the Horde King, Broken by the Horde King, Taken by the Horde King, and Throne of the Horde King. It is technically sci-fi. It feels a little bit more fantasy-ish. And it's like not your typical, like, oh, I've been kidnapped and taken to an alien planet kind of deal. There is this thing called the Uranian Federation where, like, I guess at some point Earth, like, humans have traveled to other planets, and like this federation has like dropped them off at even further planets. Like there have been human settlements on this planet for like 30 years, around there. Humans were allowed to settle on this planet as long as they followed the rules set by the people that were already living there, which was basically like, don't burn the land, don't hunt, like don't, do these things. And the Federation is supposed to be like providing for their needs, so like providing like food and other resources, and they have not been. Like they just dropped these people off and are like, oh, okay. We've been taking care of you for 20 years, so you're all set. You got to figure it out. So in order to survive, a lot of them, like a lot of people have taken to hunting illegally and like, you know, like the slash and burn agriculture method that happened in the first book. The first book was advertised to me as like, what if Khal Drogo and Dany had a happy ending? And I was like, oh, yeah, I wish that had happened, you know, along with some other things that were part of that relationship. That's kind of how it was marketed to me. And it, like, pretty much is kind of like that. So in the first one, this woman, her brother tries the slash and burn method and, like, sets some of their fields on fire because they're, like, allowed to plant things, but they aren't allowed to, like, burn anything. And so the fire got out of hand, and like the Horde King sees it. So there's different hordes, so like different groups of people like wandering the plains, and they like rotate kind of like where they're like what region they're settling in for the season, and partly in order to like maintain balance and like not deplete resources and that sort of thing. So they're like not nomadic. I guess nomadic is, that still doesn't feel like the right word, but we'll go with it. But they're like, they gave me the same kind of vibes as like Mongols, because they have like big tents and they ride these. I'm not picturing them correctly, I don't think, but they're like giant horse beings of some kind, you know, and like that's how they move the population. This is the part where I'm like, my notes are just non-existent. I just put the title. So yeah, please forgive. This one Horde King comes and is like investigating this fire. She offers to go in exchange for her brother's life, and you know, she's expecting that like she might have to sleep with him, but he's like, "Oh no, you're gonna be my queen." And she's like, "What?" And then she like learns more about like life in the Horde, and you know, like how things are run, and like how their society works and everything. And but then she like explains to him, she's like, we don't have enough food. We like that's why, like, we are dying, we are starving. Like that's why we did this. None of the Horde Kings realized like how little the humans had. This is kind of like the catalyst for, like, since he was the first, a lot of the other Horde Kings are like, oh, I didn't know that was a possibility. But then it like also makes them more aware of how humans are like barely getting by. They kind of like have their eyes open by these women, but the women like don't really meet each other. Like it's like the last 3 or 4 women meet each other, but like barely. And then I don't know. It definitely has a little bit more of a fantasy feel, if you like that. So I really liked that this was a different take on like sci-fi romance. And you know, it's not like women being sex trafficked off of Earth and everything. Like it's actually like, and like humans are established as living on this planet. They're not just like a novelty of like, oh, maybe we could sleep together. I mean, a little bit, but like not really that much. But there are a couple of things where I was like, it's like just on the edge of being like controlling and alpha male-y. Maybe not alpha male-y, but like where it's like the man is in charge and like she can't say anything against him in public, otherwise it makes him look bad. There's a couple things like that, but I'm like, the way that it's done isn't like glaringly in your face, and the instances where it happens are resolved pretty quickly. I think if they had been more extensive, I would have been annoyed and less inclined to complete the series. The other thing that I didn't love was that, like, after the second or third one, where these Horde Kings are taking human women as their wives, they didn't come together. Like, they didn't bring their wives together to be like, yeah, oh, this was like really new. This was really new for me, and like really weird for me, and like I had to adapt to this, and like this freaked me out, and like there was none of that. I think it was a missed opportunity, is kind of how I feel about it. Like, not that it didn't really like detract from the story itself, but I feel like it was a missed opportunity. So each book follows a different couple, but there is like an overarching plot line starting probably in the second or third book. There's like more of like an overarching plot line. Some of the like human women, some of the women have, like, one of them is like an empath. One of them, I don't know if I would call it like telekinesis, but like they have different powers. And like one of the kings, like the king who is like considered mad, can see ghosts or spirits. So there's like people with powers that come together, and several of the wives that come together at the end of the series to like solve a planet-wide problem. I had a good time. I thought it was a really interesting take on kind of the premise of like a sci-fi fantasy. I think my favorites were, I liked Madness of the Horde King, which was the third one. And then I liked 5 and 6, which were Taken by the Horde King and Throne of the Horde King. I think those were my favorites. I did like the first, second, and fourth ones, but like some of the moments and other things, like plot points, like those three stuck with me a little bit more. But yeah, I just heard that she's coming out with a series on the same planet. I think it's set like 200 years after the events of these books. And I think it comes out, and like there's like dragon riders. So I'm like, okay, this is going to feel like extra, a little bit more fantasy. Yeah, I'm really excited. Definitely going to be reading more. I was still in a sci-fi mood, like sci-fi romance mood. So, but I was like, okay, like I want to explore this other series that popped up. I read the first two of this other series, like interspersed with this first series. I think I read like 3 and then 1, 2, and then 5, 6, or 4, 5, 6. Because I was like, okay, I need to finish this first series before I go into this next one, because otherwise they're going to be like kind of mixed in my mind. The next series that I read is, I think it's the Clickanian series by Victoria Aveline, however you pronounce it. And I read the first 3. I read the first 3 last month. I think I read the 4th and 5th one. Anyway, this is one of the ones where women are kidnapped from Earth and brought to a world for breeding. I'll just put it that way. Which, like, is not wrong. The first book is called Choosing Theo. Book 2 is Freeing Luca, and 3 is Saving Veraco. In the first book, this woman, God, what is her name? I forget her name. This is also one that I didn't write any notes for. I just put the titles, so please forgive again. She is picked up from Earth, like by these like lizard people, and she is like sent off in this pod to Earth and like crash land. Like, she's able to get, they have like pepper spray type thing that like puts you to sleep, and she's able to get that off the belt before they put her in like her escape pod. And she lands in this escape pod, and then she like, someone is like coming for her and like chasing her, and she sprays them with a sleeping spray and like makes it to the nearest town. or like makes it to like a road and is picked up by these two other women, well, alien women. She's rescued. So they have this meeting and she is told that like, okay, like you can't go back to Earth because Earth is like a lower class planet, like because they haven't discovered like space travel, like they're not part of like the alliance, like intergalactic alliance. Like we can't take you back. Like that's just not possible. So like you have to live here for a year and like abide by our customs, and one of those customs is to get married. On this planet there's like a high ratio of men to women. So like it's like 70 or 80% men and 20 or 30% women. And there's some sort of biological thing that happened on their old planet where like women especially were wiped out, and like their population skews heavily male because of that. And so she was brought to the planet by like an underground group of people trying to find, what did they call it? Divergent evolution? Like humans and Clicanians are descended from the same kind of group of people. And, or like they had planets that were really similar and like they evolved really similarly. And so like they're like, oh, we hope we can make babies with you. And so because of this high ratio of men, they want like the best men to be breeding, I guess. And in order to like try and give birth to more babies, preferably girls, the women are in control of the relationships. They choose, like, there's like a whole marriage ceremony. They choose who they're going to marry. They choose what they do, what they eat, how often they sleep together, if they sleep together, because marriages last for like 3 months, and like you can extend your marriage if you want, but most of the time, and unless there's like a reason to, they don't. I had to go give Damien my SD card because it was full. I don't really know where I stopped because I got cut off. Okay, so on this world, because there's this like super high ratio of men to women, the men, if they do want to get married and like try to procreate with these women, they go to husbandry school. So like a school on like how to be the best husband for their wife. Things like how to cook, how to clean, how to like maintain a house, how to like do all this stuff, like how to like set up a home. And obviously like sexual pleasure is one of them, female anatomy, like all this kind of stuff. They like have all of this training, and then they go through this process. So like the higher the scores that they receive in school, like husbandry school, the better their scores, the better their chances of getting a wife, basically. So when she's told that she has to marry, this woman goes through this ceremony, and basically it's like these women are basically behind like a two-way mirror, and they get to list like, oh, these are the three that I find attractive. And then there's like the second phase is like testing, and so like the men are blindfolded and the women can do whatever they want with the men, including sleep with them and like test things out for like how compatible they are. I think there's a third phase where they like agree. So she goes through the first phase, and then the second phase, like she goes in and meets him, but Theo is like never chosen because she thinks they look like tattoos, but to everyone else it's clear that they're scars. And so she's like, oh, he's just like a tatted up like burly guy, and so she doesn't care. There's like the person who is like coordinating everyone, and then another woman who was talking to her. They both are like, if you choose him, he will like he's hands down one of the best. He's like, why the hell have you chosen me? Like, I never get chosen, kind of thing. And so it just like it really evolves from there. Each book focuses on a different couple, but there is like this overarching plot of like who has taken these women, like how many women, where have they taken, like all this kind of thing. The thing that I really liked about this series was like there's a lot more development of the world. There's a lot more going on with like policies that are put in place for like how to deal with these women. But then they also communicate with the women, and they give them homes, they give them like places to stay. And after the first woman, they don't make anyone else like participate in like the marriage ceremony unless they want to. Some events go down at the end of the first book that lead them to like a stash of other women, and so like that have previously been kidnapped. And so like that kicks off kind of the rest of the series of all these other women. And throughout the next several books there's been like a council, and like these women are allowed to be friends with, like they're living in the same place, so they are friends with each other. Like they are actively allowed to try and figure out how to get home, how, like if they want to get home, how to be involved in the world a little bit more. And it's so much more well developed. Like I've read Ice Planet Barbarians, I've read, it's like the Bubble Babes series. It's the All I Wanted Was Sushi and I Got Abducted Instead. And like those are in the same vein where like these women have been sexually trafficked. Oh, and then I read, what did I read? Convergence or something. There was some other book, maybe in like May or June, like so a few months ago. And that one was really dark. This was so good. Like this was like the fine line between like really dark and like not enough. Like Ice Planet Barbarians and the Bubble Babes books. I didn't like Ice Planet Barbarians. I read the first two. I didn't like it. Bubble Babes was like better because there was more to the world, but it still wasn't enough for me to be like, yeah, like this is really good. And like it's really smutty. So like if that, and like it scratched an itch when I was reading it, so great. But then like these are also fairly smutty, but like the world building and the politics and like the logic of the whole thing is like I'm not going to say that they're like 10 out of 10 logical, but like they're like a 6 or 7 out of 10, whereas the other ones were like a 2 or a 1 or a 0. And like the women have true emotions where they like freak out and they cry and they panic and they, just, and like it takes them a while to like be settled in this world. There is like an overarching plot again, trying to figure out who the people are behind their abductions. There's a group, can't remember if this was in the third or the fourth one, but they've organized a group of people, humans and Clickanians, who are like looking into how like policies towards humans and like how to get them like possibly back to Earth, like possibly changing some of the rules that like force them to stay here, force them to, and like no one has been forced to get married after the first book. It was just a really enjoyable time. I think the first one and the third one are my favorites of these three. Once I've finished the series, I will be able to say like, oh, this is this one. I don't know if she's done with the series. I feel like there could be more in the series based on like the person who's next. I don't know who. I don't know. I think there's a lot of backlist for both of these authors, both Victoria Aveline and Zoe Draven, that I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just keep working through their backlist and see how I do. Because like sometimes I just need like a little bit of something to read like right before bed, as I'm like having the light off, just scrolling through instead of scrolling through my phone or like playing a game on my phone or something. Instead, I'm reading a book and it puts me to sleep a lot faster. So I was very pleasantly surprised by these last two series. Also by the hockey. Like there wasn't a ton of like hockey going on. Like there were a couple games, but less in like than in like the professional hockey books. It was a pretty solid reading month in terms of like how I felt about the books. There were a couple of things where I'm like, I wish I'd made a little more progress on like this particular project, but I don't know. I was kind of just vibing, and I feel like that's kind of what I needed going into October because I am participating in Spookoplathon. I was like, okay, I'm gonna just read what I want, and then I will be maybe a little more motivated to just like read all the things in October. So I have not done the most yet, but I'm making really good progress on other things. So I'm pretty happy with the progress for this month so far. Yeah, hope you all had a good September reading month. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought. If there's any other recommendations. The last several, the Zoe Draven and Victoria Aveline, are again Janessa. And like when I tell you that I read a book a day of these series, like I did, like yeah, very very much like obsessed. So I feel like if you didn't like Ice Planet Barbarians, or if you've read the Bubble Babes or whatever they're called, but you like that kind of like you've been abducted, like what happens now, you would probably like the Clickanian series. If you want it to feel a little more like fantasy, go for the Horde Kings. I feel like if you like barbarian romance, like you're gonna like those. So yeah, I had a good time. I hope you guys had a good reading month. And I will see you all next time. Bye.